Publicly funded platforms like the NPRs are scheduled to go dark next quarter as a result of funding cuts from the federal government. Make sure y'all hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications. This is what is happening from the CEO of NPR.
As soon as tonight, the House is expected to vote on a bill that would claw back about $9 billion in previously approved funding. It comes over the Senate as the Senate passed those spending cuts overnight, I should say, which needs to be signed by the president by tomorrow night for the proposed cuts to go into effect. The cuts, known as rescissions, passed the Senate mostly on party lines, with Republican Senators Murkowski of Alaska and Collins of Maine signing with the Democrats. The bill claws back $8 billion in previously approved funds for foreign assistance programs and $1.1 billion for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which funds NPR and PBS. All of this is part of the president's effort to slash government spending, though it falls well short of the DOJ Commission's initial goal of cutting $2 trillion from the federal budget. In retaliation for these cuts, Democrats are now threatening to complicate the normal government funding process, which could lead to a government shutdown.
Black Beauty says they shouldn't cut NPR. Okay, Black Beauty. So are you suggesting that we continue as taxpayers to pay the tune of $1.1 billion for NPR and PBS? Because PBS used to be programming for kids shows, if I'm not mistaken. PBS used to be the programming for kids shows. I'm not sure that kids watch that anymore. It's changing times. It's changing times. It's changing times. Listen, I'm not necessarily against these programs, but I am wondering how relevant they are and if they actually do really even make an impact, because kids watch this and they watch this iPad over here. They watch this and they watch that iPad over there. I'm going to tell you what has been replaced with: content creators. I will tell you that most people get their news, which is one of the reasons why we have to start taking ourselves and our platforms more serious, from the people that they want to hear it from content creators. Content creators were the ones that swung the last election, believe it or not. It wasn't the news shows. It wasn't the big news. It wasn't the NPRs. It wasn't radio. It was content creators. Content creators were the ones that determined what happened in the last election. 100%. Whether you want to go from the top to Joe Rogan all the way over to the TikTok creators. The content creators are the ones that's controlling the culture. We are the ones that control the culture. It's just the facts. We have more power than rappers. We got more power than entertainers and actors. We got more power than all of these people. It is the creators. It is the creators that determine what's going on now. And these streaming platforms are the ones that a lot of these kids and a lot of the people that are tuning into the news are looking for. And if you're telling me that we need to give $1.1 billion a year over to PBS and NPR, I'm going to tell you that that's a hard sell. If those corporations, if those entities want to continue to exist, then they need to go and seek a sustainable business model like every other platform. They got to go and get advertising. They got to go and run it up. They got to go and actually put out good content. But if you're telling me that we need to continue to spend $1.1 billion on them, not going to happen. Not going to happen, bro.
Later this summer. Joining me now is Catherine Marr. She is the CEO of NPR. Catherine, thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Yeah, listen, Azriel, you said you agree. You like PBS. Cool. I don't disagree with PBS. Here's the problem. How much is it worth? Because y'all got to remember, when we say they're cutting funding, we talking about the CEO salary. You're talking about cameras, programming, probably buildings, producers, all of this stuff, right? You are basically funding taxpayers, our money, all of us, everybody that contributes and pay taxes every single year. You guys are the one that is funding these programs. So what I have to ask you is, how much is it worth to you? How much is it worth to you?
Thank you for having me.
I want to start by playing an exchange for you from the White House press secretary today during her press briefing. Take a listen.
I want to give you a chance to respond to the CEO of NPR. She's claiming that the cuts to their network will, quote, be a real risk to public safety of the country. Murkowski has argued that public broadcasting stations save lives. Could you respond to these concerns?
The NPR CEO said cutting NPR will be a risk to public safety. I am not sure how NPR helps the public safety of our country, but I do know that NPR, unfortunately, has become really just a propaganda voice for the left.
So here's your opportunity. How does NPR, how would cutting it be a risk to public safety?
So the most important thing for everyone watching to know is that these cuts are not about NPR. They are about the National Public Radio Network. 70% of all of the funds that are at risk right now go directly to local stations. Last night, while the Senate was on the floor debating this exact package, we saw a 7.3 register earthquake hit off the coast of Alaska. 3 stations immediately went into broadcast around tsunami warnings. The local sirens in their hometown told residents to tune in to their local radio station. Our staff in those, well, excuse me, not our staff, local staff in those stations stayed on the ground at sea level, putting themselves at risk to make sure that their local residents had the information they need. This is just one of the many ways in which public...
So we're supposed to spend $1.1 billion for the same thing that I get on my phone? Dog, every time I go somewhere, anytime there's something happen, and the first thing I get is on my phone. What's happening? Oh man, such and such is out. Oh, okay. Well, then I tune in. I immediately go to YouTube or go to social media. I find out exactly what's going on, and then I'm on it. Are we supposed to be paying $1.1 billion a year for that? ABJ's wide, strong, and smooth. What I'm asking is this. How much should we be funding? Because I'm sure that this woman is well paid. Let me see. This should be public information. How much does the NPR CEO make? All right. So the highest paid employee at NPR is typically president and CEO. On average, each one of these people the CEO makes $590,000 a year. This is just at NPR. The former CEO made $599,000 a year. One of the hosts made $520,000 a year. The chief legal officer made $528,000 a year. This is crazy. This is crazy. And so are y'all telling me that we are supposed to fund this? Because see, when you say stuff like, well, no, I don't agree with the idea that they are defunding these places, when you start deep diving into what is going on at these places, of course she's going to be sitting here pulling up on Meet the Press, advocating for funding to continue to go, because that $1.1 billion helps to pay for their salaries. That $1.1 billion that is funded by taxpayers pays for their salaries. So what I ask you, I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked you before. At what cost do you think that these organizations who have no sustainable business model, at what cost do you think it should take the taxpayers to actually keep funding this thing is all I'm asking. Because all we experiencing in this country is death by 1,000 cuts. You got this over here and this over there, and then you got NPR, and then you have the rail funding in California. Then you got an illegal migrant over here. And you got them stealing money from the schools in Chicago. And you got this and this. And think about it. It's a million different things that we probably not even familiar with because we don't think to look into what is the salaries of the CEO of NPR. So I'm asking y'all again, at what cost should we be funding this for the same thing that people every single day are already doing in the content creation space? At what cost are y'all willing to give in order to have this?
Public safety broadcasting plays out in the public media system around the nation on a regular basis.
And if you lose that funding, could those stations in Alaska, for instance, could they be at risk of shutting down completely, or how directly could it impact?
In Alaska, many of the stations receive up to 70% of their funding through federal dollars. Across the country, often tribal areas, rural areas, 50%. These are areas that are exposed to extreme weather patterns like tornadoes, for example. In Florida, along the hurricane coast, often at risk. We have seen estimates that as many as 80 stations could go dark, and almost all of these are stations that exist in these areas that otherwise have limited resources and limited access.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but let's now address this issue of the perceived bias of NPR. I want to play for you a little bit of a conversation I had with Senator Susan Collins. Take a listen.
I'm very concerned about what the impact will be on the emergency.
We got to get these Congress people up out of here, bro. These senators, we got to get them up out of there, bro. We got to have one of the number one things that we need to make a change for is limits, term limits for Congress. We got to get term limits for these people. These people get a lifetime job.
The alert system in states like Maine, where the system is dependent on public radio. The problem has been NPR, which its own whistleblower, Yuri Berlin, said was extreme.
They can't even talk logically. You know how you and I are able to talk and have a conversation. Hey guys, what's going on? And the problem is because what the whistleblower, I got a grandmother that talk way better than this, and she 90 plus years old. If my grandmother was talking like this, we would be like, hey, Grams, enough is enough. Ain't no more talking. You need to go and take a nap. Listen to look at these people.
Whistleblower, then NPR, which its own whistleblower, Yuri Berlin, said was extremely biased and that there was no one in the newsroom who was fair to Republicans, is essentially what he said. Mm-hmm. I agree with that. But we can defund NPR without disrupting the network.
They trying to get her out of there because she actually was telling the truth too.
Of state and local public radio and television.
Hey, these people are controlled. You see how when she started actually talking the truth about how they over there being biased against Republicans? Look.
We can defund NPR without disrupting the network of state and local public radio and television.
You see how they shut her down? These people ain't nothing but figureheads. They high-paid figureheads. They make $174,000 a year, and they get all of the access to make all of their backdoor deals and to get insights so that they can have insider trading. These people is all being taken advantage of. This is why we need term. Thank you, guys. Thank you. She's starting to tell the truth about the fact that they're biased against Republicans. Hey, let's get them out of here. Let's get them out of here. At what point do we cut off the funding and these people have to create a self-sustaining business model? Because all of us should not be funding what happens when it comes to all of this other stuff that ain't got nothing to do with us.